Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone who is joining us today from all over the world. My name is Sam Wan, and I'm the co-chair of China Gulf Forum Speaker Relations Team. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to the Arts and Culture panel of the China Gulf Forum 2022. We're extremely grateful for the amazing speakers who will be joining us today. This panel will be a moderated discussion followed by a Q&A session. You can send your questions to a Q&A box, and my colleague, Lynette Huang, will go over them after the panel discussion. The panel will be approximately 75 minutes long. This panel will discuss implications of arts in intercultural exchange. Please allow me to introduce our panelists and our moderator for today. Our moderator today is Mr. Philip Tinari. Mr. Philip Tinari is the director of the UCCA Center for Contemporary Art. Since coming to UCCA in 2011, Mr. Tinari has led its transformation from a founder-owned private museum into an accredited museum across multiple locations and a public foundation and a family of art-driven enterprises. During his tenure, UCCA has mounted more than 70 exhibitions and thousands of public programs, bringing artistic voices, established and emerging Chinese and international, to an audience of over 1 million visitors each year. From 2009 into 2012, he founded and edited LEAP, the first internationally distributed bilingual magazine of contemporary art in China. Mr. Tinari is a World Economic Forum Young Global Leader and a fellow of the Public Intellectuals Program of the National Committee on U.S.-China Relations. Our first panelist is Ms. Sophie Mayuko Arni. Ms. Arni is a curator and editor whose work centers on building cross-cultural dialogues between the UAE and Japan. He's the curator of the East to East UAE Meets Japan exhibition series. As founder and editor-in-chief of the Global Art Daily, she oversees the publications of biannual digital publications on the contemporary art scenes of Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Tokyo, amongst other cities. Our second panelist is Mr. Abu Nasser Haram. Mr. Haram is an artist and founder of the Haram Studio. Since 2003, he has exhibited in Europe, the Gulf, and the USA, including Martin Gropius Bau, Los Angeles County Museum of Arts, British Museums, Vienna Museum, and the Venice, Sharjah, and Berlin Biennials. He recently made history as the highest-selling living Gulf artist. Mr. Haram donated the proceeds of his sale to Edge of Arabia's campaign to foster art education in his native country. He's also the co-founder of Edge of Arabia. As the nonprofit social enterprise, Edge of Arabia is committed to reaching new audiences and improving understanding through free exhibitions, publications, and public programming. Lastly, our third panelist is Ms. Song Ting. Ms. Song is an AI and NFT artist, the author of China's first NFT network auctions by traditional art auction houses, and China's first generated AI artwork auction by traditional art auction houses. In 2021, she was nominated for Vogue First NFT Panel Speaker, Forbes 30 Under 30 Artist, Genti and Chanel Asia Artist, and one of the 19 NVIDIA AI Art Gallery listed artists. So without further ado, I'll hand over time to Mr. Tinari to kick off the conversation. Please.
Thanks, Sam, and great to be here with everyone this evening. So nice to meet all of my fellow panelists. I actually don't think any of us have personally met before, so this will be a nice chance for us to have an exchange, and what an international and diverse group we have. I mean, I always say yes to these student organized conferences because I just think they're such a wonderful way for people who are just getting started in their careers to kind of learn a bit about what's out there. And I remember organizing them, you know, as a grad student at Harvard many years ago. They've proliferated around the world, and so many thanks to the organizers for putting this together, and for also for including arts and culture, because I think there's sometimes a tendency for this kind of conference to focus more on social sciences or business and finance and those sorts of topics. But I think as we're going to discuss in the next 70 plus minutes, arts and culture are kind of at the core of this global world that we inhabit, especially at this moment of increasing tension, of anti-globalization, of reduced mobility of people, and all of these, you know, sad trends of the last couple of years. So anyway, I wanted to get started just with a sort of really basic question that I'll pose to the three of you successively, first to Sophie, then to Abdul Nasser, and then to Songting. And that just basically is why do you do what you do, and how do you understand art as a tool for cultural expression and global communication?
Thank you so much, Philip. And I'd like to thank, first of all, the China Gulf Forum for inviting me to speak at this panel. I'm very, very honored to be here among such distinguished speakers and moderators. And it's meaningful to be having this conversation, I think, hosted by the wonderful NYU Abu Dhabi, which is really a beacon of global education. So to answer your question, I think art has the unique capacities to transcend borders. I mean, I'm the daughter of a diplomat. My father worked at the United Nations for more than, Red Cross in the United Nations for like 30 years. And I've very much traveled the world with him as a child. And thinking of what I was going to do early on in my career, international relations, I just found studying art history to be truly let's say, a medium to understand the history, sociopolitical conditions of multiple regions. And I think art, especially the world of contemporary art today, is very much global. I think, as all of the panelists here know very well, art exhibitions can be let's say, a hub, and not only a hub, they can draw many stakeholders from different industries and can have political impact. And I think this is because art truly touches on core human universal values. And so it can truly be a means for cross-cultural exchange.
Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Harm. Good to meet you finally. I think you're muted.
Well, thank God we met Philip finally. I think we met briefly in Jeddah, like for 2 minutes or something. Anyway, I mean, I want to thank really the China Gulf Forum to give us this kind of opportunity really to meet you guys. And as Philip said, we need to talk to this young generation, and especially the students. It's an important things. And that's one of the role as an artist I'm playing in my life. I mean, my studio is open always for the young artists and from different, like novelist or in poet or in theater or anything. And I always keep telling them, I think the young artist survives through gathering. They need to sit together and go and meet the elder artists and have their own, build their own community. That's what I believe in. I mean, regarding your question, Philip, I think we need, we need to add that historical dimension. I mean, like since the Stone Age, the human began to express themselves, on caves and on rocks. Like here in Saudi Arabia, there is a lot of rock arts everywhere. And as an artist, a contemporary artist, I really go back there and try to study it and try to feel it. At the end of the day, you're gonna have your own conclusion and your own input. That's an important thing. Another point that I think the imagination is a fundamental part of the human experience. So, of course, the religion play a big role in driving this imagination, and the art embodied this imagination and turned it to tangible images and sculptures. And also, again, that's what I see in my countries. Sorry, I'm coming from a different part of this world, and we have a lot of different narrative. But also, what I love about the art and culture, I mean, all of the civilization are built on cultural. I don't know how to say it in English. I think it's bartering. It's not. It's getting. You can exchange the culture without paying. That's an amazing, element in building civilization. And the last point to me is, I think the art played a fundamental role during the major changes, like wars, like after the Second World War II, the Fluxus group and the minimalism and all of that, the conceptualism. So I think the war play and big scientific breakthrough. I think the Renaissance as an example, the Renaissance, what happened with the revolution in science and in law and sociology and all of that thing. So the art is always related to all of that thing. And as you can see us now, I think what put us together today is the art and culture through the revolution of information and technology and communication. So I hope I answer at least a small part of your question, Philip.
Well, that's great. We're just getting started. And now to you, something.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Tinnery. Actually, your 2 awards I won last year's judgments, and I think in Shanghai we sit next table to each other, but we never met in physical world. Now we met in metaverse. Nice to meet you all, and thanks CGF, all the adorable friends. And I think Tinnery's first questions for me is why I'm doing these things, why I'm accomplishing my job here. When I was 17 years old, I started to translate some open source technology, information technologies documents from English to Chinese. So since then, I started to find there's a beauty inside Web3, the open source tech community. And I felt it's my mission to transfer that open source community cross-disciplinary beauty into our language. And I found out that code is a general language for the whole world, so is art. Nowadays, we know we're facing very serious situation for the whole human beings. And I think nowadays, culture beyond country boundaries, that kind of communication is extremely important. Mr. Tinnery's question is on art's uniqueness on cultural communication. And my answer may be, first, beauty, just like Mr. Graham said, is the common topic of all human beings kind. And loving beauty, that emotion is common for all human beings kind. And in Chinese, we call it 求同存异, which means we seek common ground while we reserve differences of ourselves. So when seeing an artwork, we tend to be more tolerant and gentle and kind than having political or economic discussions in nowadays. And we admit that we have a lot of differences, but we still have a lot of emotions in common on sensing art as humans. In addition, in Chinese, we call it 美美与共, which means beauty and beauty exist together. We acknowledge that different kinds of beauty is beauty themselves. And we all know that protecting diversity in art is very important. So in art industry, we tend to be better at acknowledging others' personalities, and I think it's very important nowadays. So in my eyes, that's art's uniqueness as cultural medium, and so glad that we have the opportunity today to communicate with each other from different countries via metaverse. Yeah, that's my answer, Ms. Tinnery.
That's great, thank you. Well, good, because I think that leads us to the next part of our discussion. I mean, obviously we're here together for the China Gulf Forum, and China and the Arab world more generally, the Gulf particularly, are 2 regions of the world, and let's say China and East Asia more broadly, just so rich in artistic and cultural traditions, and yet maybe 2 regions which haven't had so many opportunities to speak and communicate with each other artistically. I recently curated this Biennale in Saudi Arabia, and one of the sections was called Peripheral Thinking, which was a term coined by the South African artist William Kentridge. Actually, in 2015, we made an exhibition with him in Beijing, and he did a lot of research and preparation for this exhibition into the ballets of the Cultural Revolution and the kind of high socialist period in China, which of course came from the Soviet Union, which in turn came from France. And then of course he had his own experience growing up Jewish in South Africa, with ballet, you know, in kind of white South Africa and a whole other very difficult context. And so he started to think about, like, just through this medium of ballet, you know, how might you draw a connection between Beijing and Johannesburg, but instead of, you know, Beijing back to Paris or Johannesburg up to Paris as you normally did. So I guess this is, you know, we have a lot of initiatives in the art world now, like recently one called South South has been started. But, you know, people looking for new kinds of exchange that are maybe not going through what were the historic or traditional centers. And that opens up all kinds of new possibilities for dialogue and conversation. So maybe Sophie, might be nice to start with you, because I know you're based in Abu Dhabi, but you have this deep familiarity with the Japanese scene, and you're trying to put these things into dialogue with each other, but also into a broader dialogue. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about that work?
Sure. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, I think, as you say, I find this example with William Kentridge I'd love to see the project. I'll look into it, because I'm working towards building this East-East dialogue. We're hearing about South-South, but I think turning around this narrative of East-West that we hear so often in the Gulf. I think it's coming throughout the UAE, throughout now Saudi, all the new museums and biennials, and often we hear about, you know, East meets West. And I think also when I was doing my master's here in Tokyo, University of the Arts, like I was hearing and I was studying a lot of exhibitions that were happening here and exporting, let's say, Japanese art in the world, mostly in the West. You'd hear about East and West again. So thinking of like a East-East dialogue, so bridging the Gulf and East Asia. I mean, I'm mostly familiar with Japan, but I think a lot of what I'm going to say is applicable to China too. I mean, I like to kind of go back to the Silk roots and thinking of as well the Belt and Road Initiative, you know, that kind of frames the whole China Gulf Forum as well. So the Silk Roads, I wrote my dissertation at NYU Abu Dhabi on the history of Chinese porcelain global appeal, especially during the early modern era, like 16th to 18th century. And I thought like that is very applicable to 21st century, because I'm seeing some contemporary Arab artists looking at Chinese tradition of porcelain making and incorporating that into their work and their practice about the Middle Eastern region as a whole. And I think thinking of porcelain as let's say as a kind of a big industry, but like an example in this kind of East-East dialogue, we can think of porcelain as a medium that has a utilitarian function, and that could have been classified in the Western art history as a craft instead of fine art. But I think it's a medium that today symbolizes, you know, global trade, which is what a lot of exhibitions happening in the Arabian Gulf and China kind of looking towards, kind of like, I think these two regions are very much, they have trade embedded in their history. So yeah, porcelain, China, Jindanjiang being the porcelain capital of the world, still is. You see a lot of what they were doing in the early, even 16th century, catering to European markets, for example, or catering to Ottoman market. Thinking of like doing calligraphy pen boxes out of blue and white porcelain for the Ottomans, and or doing tea and saucer, cup and saucer tea sets for the European aristocrats. And I think that culture of like export and not really thinking too much of this whole idea of the exotic, and it kind of goes beyond that, because it's more of just trading, right? It's more of like, what does the market demand, and how can we produce that in order to fulfill this demand, and through that create cross-cultural dialogues and create a history that is like a beautiful aesthetic history of porcelain making. And we can think of the Arabian Gulf that was very much in the Silk Roads, the early Silk Roads, a point, like a lot of the cities throughout the Gulf, throughout like Oman, UAE, Saudi, were, I mean, back then were trading ports, right, along the Silk Roads, and would be kind of storage places of porcelain and Indian spices, and then pearl, the whole pearl industry, that you can think of them also trading pearls to the Persians, to the Ottomans, to European, to the Venetian courts and the English courts. And then what, like kind of thinking about these kinds of histories and then placing it today, and then looking at, I think these two regions, we can place them together as having museum booms over since the 2000s. Art market booms, I mean, especially Chinese art market, much more kind of market size wise considerable than the Gulf art market, but still a museum boom. You see, like, I think it was, I think Philip, you would know this more than you could share a bit about your experience, but you know, hearing about a museum opening up every day in China, and I think 2000, I think it was 11 or something like this, right? 12 or more recently, thinking about what's happening in Saudi right now, like all the beautiful, the biennial, but Al Ula Festival, everything that's happening in Riyadh, it's so exciting, like Jeddah and everything that's happening there. UAE with the Louvre Abu Dhabi that opened, the Guggenheim Abu Dhabi, you see so many like museum booms. And it's a bit of this culture of export, I think could be an interesting facet to think about, and placing that within the history of both regions. I think it's definitely a broader topic, but I just wanted to introduce ideas.
No, that is like a fascinating parallel. Maybe we'll have time for it in a little while. The kind of just the narrative of explosion, right, and and the excitement that attracts from other parts of the world. I mean, I think there are definitely parallels to be mined there. But I'm looking at my sheet. I'm realizing we're also thinking first about historical ties. So I don't know if Abdel Nasser, you had anything to add on that front. I mean, has this connection between Saudi, between the Arab world and China or Asia been influential at all in how you think about your work, or has it been something you've researched a bit or found relevant?
You know, we here in Saudi Arabia, we usually forget that we are part of Asia. You know, our location is really different, and you know, we were like influenced by the Western, culture. And I just, when Sophia was talking about Asia, I just remember that Saudi Arabia is part from Asia. But we don't have that. We don't have a lot of activities between like us and China or us and Japan. But lately, I think there is like a lot of potential to build these kinds of bridge, which is so important to us. I was doing a small research yesterday, and I was looking what's about that old relationship between us and China. Of course, the Silk Road is one of the main things, and I think part of it was crossing Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm. But in 2016, Chinese archaeologists found the broken pieces of ceramic on the Red Sea. And it's back to the, I don't know how to pronounce the name, I think Queen Dynasty, Queen. Yeah. It was like in the 17th century or something. So it's, so they just discover it. And now I think, now they are trying, there is a lot of scholarship from China coming after they discover these things, and they are now here in Saudi to look for that thing. One other important things happens in 2021. I think the Ministry of Education announced plan to teach the Mandarin as elective subject in 8 high school. 2 of the 8 is girls' school, and I think that's another important dimension. Okay, of course, the museum, the art is so important, the art event, all of that thing. But I think just inserting this kind of language in our education, system is an amazing thing, because before is like first thing is English, the second thing is French, and that's it. So I think now the mentality, even if the young people, you will not believe there is a lot of young lady, boys and girls, they know how to speak Korean. They know the songs only because of the K-pop or something.
I was so surprised by that. My time in Saudi was like just how huge K-pop is among teenagers in Riyadh. But that's maybe a topic for another time.
I mean, it's crazy now. I mean, no, this is a kind of hint that everything now is possible, if you know what I mean. It's not like before. Now there is a kind of openness, and the people is going to accept, that kind of diversity. So I think now the timing is perfect to do a lot of things between us and China.
Fascinating. Songting, do you have anything to add?
Fun fact, when I had a special meeting with the European friends, it's totally surprising that their doctors follow me via Instagram to see my K-pop and C-pop dance video. And yeah, that's very interesting. And I was kind of awkward because they mentioned that. By the way, as Miss Sophia and Mr. Garam said, the Silk Road is very crucial when it comes to the history. There's a town very famous as the main transportation hub of the Silk Road. It's called Dunhuang. And in Dunhuang, the art soil is so open-minded, so with Manna culture, Western culture, East culture, blending with each other. So we got the very beautiful Dunhuang sculpture, the fresco group. And Dunhuang is the most important metaphor when I created Art Dubai Digital's Chinese Pavilion, because I want to raise the empathy of all over the world's friends. Being the real open-minded man will make you have the possibility and have that kind of eye to see the real beauties. And it may be different from yours, but it's different from theirs too. But it's complicated, meanwhile beautiful. And also, when I having my bachelor degree in Tsinghua University, my graduate paper, is around the Dunhuang topic on the Dunhuang dance schools development and something else. So for me, I think when it comes to Dunhuang, that will raise the empathy of all our students in China, that we used to have a so sublime culture, meanwhile with a so open-minded heart. So that's a fun fact I want to add up. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. No, that's really, I mean, Dunhuang is such an important point of reference for generations of artists. I mean, especially if you think about how it was really only, I mean, not discovered, but kind of popularized in the early 20th century as China was kind of figuring out its own modern situation. And I always think about the moment in the late 70s when China was kind of just coming back, schools were reopening after the Cultural Revolution, and all the artists would go out there to copy the murals, right, to study from these great frescoes. And people from the Art Academy, from the Film Academy, from Shanghai, from Xi'an, from Beijing, from wherever, anyway, just kind of as a melting point at that, but that's sort of another topic. Let's move into the present. It's, I think we've set a nice groundwork for this conversation. It might be interesting to talk specifically about projects that the three of you are involved in. And I'd like to start with Abdel Nasser. I mean, I think you were a co-founder of really the most important or the foundational initiative of Saudi contemporary art kind of in the international world, which was Edge of Arabia. And for those who don't know, I think it was founded around 2010. Is that right? Or,
no, it was founded in 2004.
Of 2004, okay. And well, you can tell us about it, but just, the gloss, it was a platform that brought this vibrant contemporary art scene that people really had no idea about outside of Saudi, essentially, to a much larger public. So, and it's been through different phases, but its historical importance is undeniable. And then I also just love to hear a bit more. You mentioned at the beginning about your studio and your studio as a space for exchange and cultivation and dialogue and discussion. Yeah. And I guess more broadly, your thoughts on the current scene in your country. You're speaking to us from Jeddah at the moment, right?
No, right now I'm in Riyadh. My studio actually is in Riyadh.
Okay.
Yeah, so right now I'm in Riyadh. I don't know, I sent a small presentation. I don't know if we can show it or it's...
Sure, of course, please.
I sent it to them. I don't know if they have it or no, but...
I'm sure they're listening. I think one of them must have the screen sharing power.
Anyway.
It's not with me, unfortunately.
It's okay, Philip.
I'm sure they'll hop in.
No, it's okay. Well, actually, I'm actually from the southern region of Saudi Arabia. This is so important. So the idea will. Oh, here we go.
There we go.
Oh, that's amazing. So actually, as I said, I'm from the southern region of Saudi Arabia. Well, the southern region of Saudi Arabia, we are next to Yemen. So what's behind us is like the Arab Sea. So there is nothing behind us. So can I go to the next slide? In the southern region, yeah, that's it. You know, we were so lucky that the governor of the southern region of Saudi Arabia, he was an artist and a poet. So the Prince Khalid was an artist and a poet. So what he did an art village for the artist. Can you believe it? So there is like the first floor is a studio for the artist, and the second floor is a residence where he can, you know, like it's a kitchen with, you know, with bathroom, with everything, with a bedroom. So, and in the next to the art village, there was like a theater, and the theater is for, you know, the ceremony, the music event, all of that thing. And I think it was the only place in the whole country who did this. Put the artist with the theater, with the music event. And especially in that time, you know, the country, to be honest, was controlled by a conservative ideology. It was too hard. You know, saying you are an artist in 2001, it's become like a moral scandal.
Right.
You know, you're gonna be crazy with your family, with you know, with everyone, with the whole society.
Yeah.
So that prince really have the gut to do this step. So as you can see, I was sitting in the middle. I'm the guy who's in the middle, sitting next to the elder artist. They start to teach us, you know, the fundamental thing, the anatomy, the, you know, dark and light, all the perspective, all of that thing. And the other important thing in that place, we were able to meet another people from different countries. And as I told you before, it was so conservative. It wasn't easy for the journalist or for anyone to come to the country.
Right. Wow.
So can I go to the next one? So as I told you, you can see us. This is one of the pioneer, Dr. Abdul Halim Radawi. He was taking us to the, you know, to teach us the right thing, to teach us the landscape. And after that, we're gonna do an exhibition, and he will be with us to teach us, you know, and to help us. So it was an amazing, really thing. But, you know, we noticed as a young artist, we noticed there is a kind of, you know, guardianship and a lot of guidance, and the elder artists want you to copy what they are doing if you want to survive. They start to tell us all of that thing, and we were like, okay, but let's see, we might follow you, we might not. So that after that, we did a group. The second slide, please. We did a group called Shatta. Shatta, the basic concept of Shatta is our grouping was built on division. So we want to be away from all of that old thing. So we build our group, you know, that's our region. It's not desert, it's like mountains with trees. So it's it's totally different environment than Riyadh and Jeddah.
Right.
So, and the other most important thing, the other most important element is the internet. You know, in the late of the 80s, the just internet appeared and it become like our new source of knowledge. So we don't need anyone else now. We can go and do our own research and do our, you know, communication and all of that. And after that, we start to talk to the other, you know, like the poet, the novelist. We start to learn about the theater. We start to learn about the other artists in New York and French, the Renaissance, all of that thing. After that, my friend, they kicked us out. You can see the other slide. They kicked us out from that village because we start to not to follow the rules. So we start to do our small, can I go to the next slide, please? We start to do our small brainstorming. You know, you can see Ahmed. I don't know if you recognize Ahmed. Ahmed is there. Ahmed Mater.
in the back. Okay.
Yeah. Ashraf Fayyad, me. This is a poet, his name is Muhammad Khadr. This is Abdul Karim Fadl. So that was our small brainstorming room where we are doing our new subject. And one of the, honestly, sorry to say this, but one of the things we argued with the elder artists about the Renaissance. We said when that Renaissance happened, Saudi Arabia, China, India, South America, we were away from all of that.
Yeah.
Why would we copy them? It's something happened led by Copernicus when he said the sun is the central of, and we don't know what was happening at that time. So we say we don't belong to that modernity period. We can belong to the contemporary. Contemporary is more related to us than that. So that's how the argument started with that. Can I go to the next slide, please? So we met, me and Ahmed and Stephen in Abha, and we start to, we said we can't do any movement in this country, inside the country right now, because there is no rule, there is no infrastructure, and you can't wait for that. So what we said we can't reach our goals without regulation. So we said Stephen to help us a lot, because he's coming from a different background and from a different, he knows more than us, and he's coming from a deep civilization, so he started to help us. So we built this. Okay, the name, we were, as I told you, from the southern region and Yemen. There is nothing behind us, just the sea. So that's why we call it Edge of Arabia. So we became like the Edge of Arabia, because we are from the southern region. The other thing, our main subject in that movement was focused on, we need to change the subject. We are not going to draw any portrait or landscapes. So we're gonna change the subject. And the other thing, we're gonna change the medium. And the most important thing is the perspective. So we found out that we can, the critical sense in our artwork and to be, build discourse will be connected with the community. So the community need to be part of it. It's not something accessory or something just to put it in your wall. No, it's a different thing. We need to encourage the people to give us a statement. That was one of the main things. And I will. When you want me to stop, Philip, tell me. I just need 3 minutes. It's okay.
It's okay. Maybe we just keep moving through the slides, if that's okay.
Yeah. So can we go to the next slide? So one of the things we did, big shows all over the world. And as I told you, we start to learn how to do the presentation, how to engage with the businessmen. We ask them to give us the money, to fund. We learn about the patronage. Can you go to the next slide? And in 2011, we found out that how can we do an education program? We have no money. So what we did, we said, why don't we donate some of our artworks and have some money and build our education program? It's easy. So I put this piece in an auction as a charity to collect money. And then we thought we're gonna get like $100,000 or something. And suddenly we get like $850,000. And we were like, whoa, it was crazy. So we built an education program for 5 years. Can I go to the next slide, please? Amazing. So here is the artist. Can I go to the next, please, slide? Just still two.
Let's go.
Anyway, here is the artist. There is like 10 of the artists who were with you, Philip, in the Pioneer. They were with us from the beginning. Adel Amoudi, she was like with us when she was like 14 years old or something. And mashallah, she just graduated from the Royal College of Art, because we took her when she was like 18 to that college and we showed her,
Sure, yeah.
So lately, carry on, Cliff. You want to say something?
No. I think I'm just talking to the moderator, just telling them to move it forward so we can keep going. Keep going. There we go. Oh, yeah. Now we see the artist.
Yeah. Go to the artist. Go to the next one. So finally, I start to go, please, to the other one. So finally, right now, since 2013, I need to say that since the vision of the 2030 came, and we are allowed to meet the boys and girls in one place without being afraid.
Right.
So that's why I come back to the country and we start to focus on doing our studio in Riyadh. Because if the moderator can move the slides, you're gonna see we are really living. Yeah, carry on. This is some of the artists, as I told you, Sarah Abu Abdullah. So what we did we need to take the advantage of this grand narrative we are living and this enlightenment. Some of the girls can't travel yet. So as a studio, we start to do a lot of lectures.
Wow.
To them, because they still, the changing is, yeah, there is a lot of change, but you need sometimes to reach these kind of slices, of the community.
And
So
when was this? This is 2015, 2016, or?
Yeah. I mean, we started since 2013 to build the studio, doing the program. Most of it is for these people who can't go or can't travel because of their dads. We have a room for the girls and we have another rooms for their dads, because if the dad want to come, we got to give him coffee, watch the TV until they will finish. And we start to import, if you're going to go to the next slide, that's very important thing. We start to import some expert professors to come to do the workshops here in the studio to these kinds of slices of the students or the young generation. And thank you so much. It took a long time, Philip, and the guys. Sorry for taking a long time.
Not at all. No. It's super fascinating context. I mean, I think this is the thing people just like. It's just so hard to understand from outside. I mean, the speed and how recent these transformations in Saudi have been, but also the background behind them, and that the work that people, especially you, have put into this in the past 25 years of kind of, it looks like a sudden set of changes, but there's a history to it as well. So, thank you for sharing all of that. It's so inspiring. And I think we'll be able to circle back if we have time as well. But thank you so much. Well, let's. I think this is also a good segue because, we just heard from Abdel Nasser really a story of coming from even a peripheral part of Saudi to creating a very central node in terms of Saudi's connection to a global art scene. And what Sophie's been doing seems more in line with kind of other ideas of globalization. I mean, you mentioned your background and this extreme cosmopolitanism, which weirdly is becoming a rarity or seems to be becoming a rarity in a sense. So you founded a platform called Global Art Daily, and the one idea behind it is to be a place for global art dialogue that's rooted in the UAE, but kind of looking in many other directions as well. So we'd love to hear a bit about that.
Thank you, Philip. And thank you so much, Abdel Nasser, for sharing a beautiful presentation. I'm inspired. I also have some slides. I think I can share myself. Let's try this. So before Global Art Day, can you see my screen?
Yes, yeah. Just go to, if you don't mind going to full screen, it'll look even better.
So if you don't mind, just before Global Art Day, I'd just like to share a bit about this East exhibition series. That's very much tied to what I'm doing as well with Global Art Daily. But
sure.
This is something I started in 2016, so very much recent. I'm a very young curator in that sense. And I started at the NYU Abu Dhabi project space. So I was a senior in my senior year. And there's this beautiful project space on this Saadiyat campus that we had, Saadiyat Island campus. And we were there, and we saw the Louvre being constructed. We were in this it was very much a surreal experience that all the NYU people here can relate to. So this East series started as an idea to bridge the UAE and Japan. And I thought of, because I was studying a lot of this history of porcelain and also Japanese art history, and I was meeting a lot of young artists living in Abu Dhabi, Emirati artists that have were looking towards the West mostly as art education. They would go to London, they would go to RISD, it was a big platform, Rhode Island School of Design. They had a partnership with a foundation in Abu Dhabi. And I thought of how about let's try to create this East-East dialogue, what would it look like? So we did this exhibition series. I chose 4 artists from my generation, very upcoming, all of them were all under 25. And we did this show and we looked at different parallels that we could draw between the UAE and Japan. And we had, I will check to see. So we had first this idea of, I think, tradition rooted in the traditional wear. So you think of like, this piece was called kibi mosh, so a combination of like the kimono and the bisht. So bisht is the kind of ceremonial kind of robe that men wear for ceremonial events throughout the Gulf, I'm sure, UAE mostly, but I think Gulf. And then the kimono is being also something not just for female, but also like the men wear this kind of yukata kimono for men. So we did a mix and we created this piece, and thinking about both regions have this this very, very rooted sense of like pride in their traditions. As they moved very fast toward modernity, they looked back and preserved a piece of their heritage. I commissioned this illustrator from Dubai who did these kinds of like ukiyo-e woodcut prints, but like Emirati style, using these like the burqa, and then having kinds of like the myth element or the menam. So just thinking of how, again, cartoon and manga being a huge influence on Emirati youth. And I think it's Saudi as well. We see with like K-pop, but I think Japanese anime had a big impact on 90s youth. We saw as well with the tradition of like knitting. So we had someone who looked, an artist called Amna Al-Ma'amari, who had, she looked at like weaving patterns and kind of used Japanese, these kinds of colors that were used in early ukiyo-e prints, this kind of pink, muted pink, and this green that were kind of earthy colors. And then we looked at this transition to materiality, and I collaborated with Alanud Alawadli, a young artist from Abu Dhabi. We went to Daiso together, because what's a Japanese store in Abu Dhabi? Daiso is this kind of like dollar chain store from Japan. You can buy like cheap stuff, and we started to buy all kinds of plastic, and she started to kind of create these found objects. So from this show, we did a second iteration in Chica Space in Al Sarkal Avenue, Dubai. We kind of put that show there, which was, it's very interesting kimono abaya shop. So it worked well with the concept. And then we did the show there. And then the third iteration was the 2020. So in 2017, I thought of 2020 as being a huge year because of the Dubai Expo opening in 2020 and the Olympics. And I had no idea, of course, of the whole pandemic, and 2020 being such a heavy year for all of us. But in that sense, I think both UAE and Japan have, and can be said about China and Saudi, I think, have a very futuristic vision, right? It's very future-oriented countries, and thinking about futurism and what that means. And is it only a linear futurism? Like, I think the UAE, since, I mean, for the past 50 years has just gone upwards, or maybe the 2008 crash, but it's gone upwards so far. And Japan was very much on an upward tradition in the 80s. They was like invincible, you know, they were going up, and then they had a slowdown, and then Fukushima happened as well in 2011, the big nuclear disaster. And so Japan in that sense is more of like, I thought, a more circular kind of futurist, circular futurism of construction and reconstruction. So I wanted to kind of put these two together. So I showed works by like Farah Al-Qasimi, photographer based between New York and Abu Dhabi and Dubai. And she photographed a lot of what like constructions of the UAE and kind of landscapes and speculative landscapes as well, from Ala Idris, who's another artist from Abu Dhabi. And then I mixed that with like video art from this artist who skated throughout Fukushima Street, this Japanese artist. You can see that above. And I wanted to see like how, you know, in this future-oriented country, like what happens if there's a disaster, like what would happen, you know, how would kind of thinking of sustainability and that sense of uncertainty. So we had this show in Dubai, and then the fourth one I just curated last year, we brought it to Tokyo. So I brought, it was a 15 artist show. So it started out as like a small, all of these, by the way, has been like completely self-funded. It's been like, you know, very much DIY. Yeah, spaces saying yes, we go, and then we try to make stuff happen. This one, I had some connections in Tokyo because I did my master's here. And then this space Block House, as well as HB Nezu, 2 spaces in Tokyo, opened us up to do the East-East iteration. And so I thought of bringing all these UAE artists, but mixing with Japanese artists as well, and doing a curio shop. So this going back to kind of my ideas on porcelain and on kind of trade. I think when you think of UAE, when you think of Japan, the word exotic comes to mind a lot from the Western point of view, and thinking of how we can play on that, like how we can play on stereotypes to even like this whole thing with them, like these two countries being such like exotic places. How can we have that as a point of a starting point for deeper cultural appreciation? So I looked at like this Japanese ceramist called Daisak, who did this energy tank series and think of like oil. And then we had Christopher Benton, who's now showing at Venice. That's amazing, with Abu Dhabi art. And he did this series of like keychains, Dubai keychains, that we kind of had a whole install of him in Tokyo. And I showed a lot of, again, I collaborated with younger artists who were interested in Japanese anime. And like I met this Emirati artist called Aisha Al-Ali, who's also called Yoshi. And she learned full Japanese, and she did a whole video for us, like mixing some kind of Emirati soap opera, but dubbed in Japanese. And she loves these kinds of anime characters, and she put them on like Lebanon up, like these kinds of like drinks that you find throughout the Gulf. Bacala. So I try to have multiple kind of, mix throughout this curio shop. And this is an ongoing project. I mean, we've I'm doing it more and more. And I think next up is going to be more institutional. I really want to bring this to many more places, do it on a larger scale, because it's the right time, I think, to be looking at East and East, UAE, Japan, or, this is an ongoing research I just published with the Fikir Institute as well. So if you're more interested in that, I'll stop sharing now. But yeah, so my work with Global Art Daily, in that sense of the publication, I started this during my studies at NYU Abu Dhabi, and all of this show was very much a product of all the conversations I've had with artists that I met in the UAE. And then when I moved to Japan, artists I would meet in Japan, and thinking of how do you build cross-cultural bridges. I think it has to come, from the grassroots level, building up, and it takes years, right? It takes decades in order to have something that's really like on a global scale. But I want to put global at first. Like I really chose this Global Art Daily name to have this global sensibility starting from that, because and I think that's NYU Abu Dhabi that what taught me, being surrounded with more than 180 nationalities, students in Abu Dhabi, and knowing that there's let's say like art can help to bridge cultures. So yeah.
Well, no, that's super exciting. That is one of the questions that keeps coming up in the little Q&A box, which I'm sure we'll get to in just a little while longer. But before we go there, thank you again. And now I'd love to hear just a bit more from Songting. You talked about Dunhuang, which I know is the basis of one of your better known projects, but you were also a curator of an NFT project for our Dubai, and just this year, which was just a few weeks ago. And you've really distinguished yourself as a young artist in China, working in this kind of crypto AI space. So, I mean, I think it's the hottest topic in the art world right now. I mean, I think people have varying degrees of familiarity with it. So I'm sure you spend a lot of your time just kind of explaining sort of what it is, what you do, how it relates to, earlier modes of art. But I think one thing that is important, and I have to apologize because I'm going to have to pop out exactly at 10:30, whatever it is, in 5 minutes, because I'm actually a panelist on another similar conference that's happening right at the same moment, if you can believe that. But what I wanted to say before handing it over to Songting is that I want to push back against this idea of a crypto artist, right? I don't think there's such thing as I mean, I don't believe in artists as anything other than artists, right? I mean, I think why limit ourselves, right? Just, I mean, there are new media artists have been taking advantage of all kinds of new technologies in media since the beginning of, human endeavor. This is probably just the latest step in a very long story. So please tell us more.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Tinnery. And I want to share my keynotes, I think.
I think
Wait
you
a
can
minute.
do it yourself. It sounds like. I think Sophie was able to just head on. There we go.
Keynotes.
There we go.
Yeah, in my eyes, NFT is only a part of crypto art. If we call there's a word called crypto art, I'll show you my practice. Yes, it's part of my work, but meanwhile, it's an NFT gallery for all of the world users. If you could use internet, you could access that NFT gallery. It's my work. I want to transfer the idea that I want my NFT works on chain could be used by everybody in the world, living in the world, now especially in America or China. I want everybody to use my NFT because that's the destiny for her, because it's on chain. And actually, Picasso's first NFT exhibitions happened in my work, inside my work. My works are NFTs, but they could be used. And yeah, that's the Picasso's NFT called, I think it cost the collector $20 billion. Yeah, I think. And so it's very vivid because it's expensive. And during that practice, I want to say that NFT is only a small part of crypto art in my eyes, because I think smart contract driven is very crucial, because it's a brand new interactive way for all the audiences and the crypto artists, all the artists, the creators, we call it. The relationship is totally changed because we use blockchain technologies and it's beyond all the boundaries. And I want to show you another NFT practice for me. Yeah, in Chinese, the audiences ask what is love, and AI is just answered with a question. I want to show you that I always use AI as my brushes and blockchain as my canvas, and I put a lot of different kinds of AI algorithm models on chain. Because in Chinese, when it comes to AI, artificial intelligence, short for artificial intelligence, is the same pronunciation as I. And in blockchain world, is a huge algorithm consensus called POW, proof of work. And I think love is the proof of work, because you pay more attention to your lover, to your family, they will receive more love from them. And that's an AI model on chain, and NFT, meanwhile, will change by the interaction from the collectors. So it's an NLP, yes, but the NLP's data nutrition is from my own sci-fi novels and all the philosophy open source archive all over the world. So the AI girl just talked very like a professor, because she learned all the philosophy archive from the world. And in my eyes, in broaden view, that if an artwork using blockchain technology or involved with blockchain culture could be called crypto art. And I think there are several ways for all the practitioners to participate. Yeah, it's from Dunhuang sculptures. And all the colorful area you see from physical eyes is made of the data from the whole earth, all human beings, their daily life, like they're walking their dogs, they're eating some hamburgers, and they're enjoying the sunshine. All the human beings' image data in their daily lives around the 4 years will be used as the GAN, the model's nutrition pool. And all the colorful area we see is added up by the AIs instead of human beings. Because in my eyes, Dunhuang is such a place with so many splendid culture from different areas. So I need to find out the way that when the sculpture facing the physical world, the color just faded. Nobody knows what the color exactly it is. in the ancient times. So I need to find a way to like supplement or repaint that picture. But in my eyes, when it comes to Dunhuang, the frescoes, the Dunhuang areas, gods and goddesses, they love human beings and they love human beings' life too. So I use all of the earth data to add the painting brushes to be the god or goddesses part. And the music is made up different ethnic groups. I'm from Xibo. It's a minority ethnic group in China. And we also collected like Hui ethnic groups and different countries' instrument sound to be made into that music. And that video could be related to NFT because we could use a contract like that. I'll show you all the audiences. We could use ERC-721 contract as our tool to create an NFT. And because Ms. Tinnery said, we should not limit ourselves because in his eyes, crypto may be a medium, but in my eyes, because I come from the open source tech developer community. So my angle will be that when you are using NFTs, NFT is not only a medium. NFT is some way that with cultural meaning, because ERC-721, the protocol NFT mainly used, is open source and approved by the whole Ethereum community all over the world. It's voted by the whole Ethereum developers that we could use ERC-721 to be a official Ethereum token standard. And everybody could use ERC-721 to create non-fungible tokens. So in my eyes, crypto art is a cultural innovation movement ongoing based on open source engineering innovation. And for me, there's other things I'm looking forward to, such as the yeah, this one I'll show you. It's my work, but it's a several layers NFTs renderer in a blockchain renderer, yeah, and each sub-layer NFTs owner, their collectors, will have the right to change a little bit a feature of the sub-layers image by raising a transaction on chain, means using cryptocurrencies. And that piece called a blockchainism is made up 4 parts: consumerism and idealism and free will and other sublayer. And if you think blockchain is money, you could use your cryptocurrency to make the very ugly and chaos sublayer to be the main visual of the whole work. It's up to your choice. And if you think a free will is very crucial, you could make that free will sublayer to be the main visual of the whole work by raising a transaction about cryptocurrency in that blockchain. So I'm quite looking forward to new innovation on NFT art instead of only a GPG, GIF video into NFTs. And I think that will be something new. When it comes to Art Dubai, it's an honor for me to witness that for the 15-year-old Art Expo, famous all over the world. The first time Art Dubai has this Art Dubai digital session. And the first pavilion at the entrance of Art Dubai Digital is created by me. As my demonstration just now, I use Dunhuang as a whole metaphor in Chinese crypto artist pavilion. Meanwhile, it's very interesting that I met a lot of friends in Dubai, and even Her Highness Princess Latifa came and see the works in digital ways and had a discussion with us. And I think it's very interesting that when I doing the creation job for the Art Dubai Digital's entrance area, I pay more attention on the artworks who help us to review our traditional cultural identity, because NFT is a new way, but I think what is us and what is the creator's cultural identity, that's not a new question, and we could answer that with the new tools. So I collected the Mid-Asia crypto artist NFT artworks about herself and her thoughts on women identities, and I collected Korean crypto artist work too to express what is him. So yeah, it's very interesting. And for the Art Dubai Digital curation job, I had a talk with Benny, the director of Art Dubai this year. And as we said that when facing COVID, there's so many things transfer themselves from physical world to digital world, and that progress will not be returned in most of the ways. So so when we are seriously face the digital culture identity of ourselves and digital changes on art, that's a very important question for the whole world. And for the Art Dubai Digital, the first Art Dubai Digital this year is only a beginning. So yeah, that's my presentation, and for Ms. Chinnery's questions, and that's all. Thank you. Yeah, has I stopped my sharing? I wish so.
And our moderator, Mr. Philip, has to leave because he has another appointment, but I will take over the Q&A session. And thanks our panelists so much for your insightful discussion. And now I saw that we have received a few questions from our attendees, and now I'll pick one of them. So we received one question from our fellow participant, Anu Farouk. And first of all, Farouk thanks all the panelists for the incredibly fascinating discussions. And he would like to ask what do the panelists think is the future for international art cross-culturally? And maybe Miss Arnie, could you address this question first?
Sure. Can you hear me? Yeah, you can hear me. No, thank you for the question. I think future of art, cross-cultural dialogues and art, it's only going forward. I mean, you've seen with the NFT revolution, and I think something, everything that you're presenting is super inspiring. I think we're moving towards more and more as post-COVID, right? People want to go out to exhibitions, etc. So I think it's not only going to be, we've seen during COVID, it was all this digital activation. And I think it's not a coincidence that the NFT boom happened also during the pandemic, because we were all, stuck on our laptops and our phones. And then for the first time ever, museums and fashion brands and everybody had to really think about how to activate audiences digitally and worldwide. But I think post-COVID, we're going to return to like all the biennials. You see Venice Biennial opening next week, everything, all the exhibitions, museums, more and more of these cross-cultural dialogues. I think East-East will be more and more, South-South will be more and more of a axis versus always like South-West, North-South or East-West, more kind of dialogues between quote unquote peripheries, which is, periphery, I mean, because I don't like to use the word periphery because we have to think of like a center. And if we think the West is still the center, I think less and less, more and more, we're going to a word that is kind of post like Western in the art world, at least. It's still very prevalent, but yeah. So I was saying, so I think more and more exhibitions, of course, in-person things happening, South-South, East-East dialogues, and then NFTs, I think more and more phygital exhibitions. So physical meets digital, right? So you have just like the Art Dubai Digital, you had like actual screens or objects, and then that could also with AR and VR. I mean, the possibilities are endless. To always, when you think of going to an art exhibition, you won't only see paintings and sculptures, you'll always have some kind of QR code or some kind of glass or some kind of something or a screen that will have a like a digital twin to having to like a physical object. And I think like one example of that I can think of in the Japanese sphere is Startban. It's an incredible blockchain art company in Japan. And they've been pushing this phygital concept, and they're having an exhibition right now in Hong Kong showing Japanese designers and artists. And what they're doing is they're showing like haute couture pieces and then the digi couture garments. So it's like haute couture pieces and then the NFT, which is a 3D rendering of the dress on the screen that you can purchase and you can wear in the metaverse. And the collectors who still collect art or fashion pieces can buy the actual piece for more money maybe. But like that's kind of these access, I think will grow. I hope that answers.
Thank you very much, Ms. Arnie, for your answer. And now we receive another question from our attendees. So one attendee asked, we see Arabic calligraphy in many Arabic arts. What does calligraphy means to Arabic arts? I wonder if Mr. Abdul Nasser Gahrin can address this question to our attendees.
Well, I mean, the Arabic calligraphy, I think the people make a mistake. It's called the Arabic letters. You know what I mean? Because these letters are used in Urdu, in Persia, I mean, like in Iran, you know, like in Urdu, in India, Pakistan. So many different countries using these kinds of letters. But I think it's usually the Arabic calligraphy is related to the soul, to the deep part of the human being, you know, and also the calligraphy is related to the architecture, you know, like if you have seen some Islamic buildings and mosques, you can see the calligraphy how embedded to fit with the architectures. And I think now the Arabic calligraphy is still, I mean, I have seen a Chinese, they write in Arabic calligraphy, but in 6 different ways in China, which is an amazing thing, that how they turn this Arabic calligraphy to Chinese calligraphy and they mix it together and it looks amazing. I have seen it also in some mosques in China and in a billboard. And so I know most of the people, they thought that the Arabic calligraphy is gonna go. It's not true. They need to invent it. And I have seen a new building in Riyadh now, a new amazing building. The facade is all Kufi. They call it Kufi. It's one of the type of the Arabic calligraphy. So the Arabic calligraphy is, I think, still needs some new people to invest on it and to develop it and to take it forward because it's at the end of the day, it's representing a kind of culture and religion and a huge part of this world. I hope I answer to the question.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your answer. And now I think we have more questions coming in. There's one question from an attendee asking, why is art important to human life in the 21st century? And what ways do art inform us about life? Maybe could Ms. Song Ting answer this question to offer some of your insights about this? And other panelists, feel free to jump in. Yeah.
Thank you, Mia. Why is art important to human life in your days? I think that question may be related to another question by the audiences. It's called when facing COVID-19, how to manage the culture shocks. And I think for that question, why is art important to human life? The first thing is when facing COVID, there are few people who feel very comfortable. There are few people who feel peaceful. So from the ancient time, art is always a healing way for our hearts. So I have a lot of family and friends. They're now in Shanghai, facing very serious situation on COVID, and I will not give them suggestions on how to live better, but I wish if they could, they may find a book or some digital exhibition to see, to help their tranquilize themselves. And I think that's art function on healing people. For the second thing is that, yeah, it's 21st century, but globalization is very important. In art, you could experience so many different kinds of ethnic groups culture, different nationality culture from all over the world, and it maybe broaden your eyes on what is the word and what is me. And for the third answer for why is art important to human life, it may increase your sense ability on feeling happy. Because when sensing art, you need to use eyes, ears, and even your hands touching. So if art could help you make happier in the life, I think good. And the rest question is, in what ways do arts inform us about life? The same.
Can I add one more thing, please? I think it's an amazing answer. And I think when you mentioned the 21st century, there is a lot of issues now that no country can solve it, or only, let's say, the strong country can solve it. I will give you an example, like the climate change right now. It's a collective, everybody in this earth need to participate in this thing to solve this problem. So I'll give you another example, the food shortage now. So everybody need to work as a human being on this, living on this planet. So the artists, need to address this kind of issue through their artworks, through their discourse, through their, even the curators, which is the main important, in Jamil, in the Dir'iyya Bin Ali, just lately, which was created by Philip, and we found a lot of Chinese artists in the biennial, which is an amazing thing. And then I have one of my friends, he said in the beginning, what's the relationship between us and China? I said, wait, let us see what they are displaying. And we found the Chinese artists start to address the issue of the global warming. And he said, yes, and he immediately get connected when we start to mention the global warming and the food shortage and the COVID, how we all get affected and no one, we start to help each other. So I think the art is a very important medium to use in these kinds of issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your answer, Mr. Cochran. And now we have time to address one more question. And I saw there's one question in our Q&A box from Rui Wang. And he asked, how teachers and students will manage their emotions according to cross-cultural communication when they are facing the cultural shocks in the UAE classroom. And I wonder if Ms. Sophie Yardi can address this question, since you have experience studying in a UAE-based university, NYU Abu Dhabi.
Sophia, before you answer, Sophia, guys, can I say, I'm sorry, I need to go to get the iftar because now it's gonna pray.
No, it's the time.
Is this okay?
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank
sorry,
you so much.
Sophia.
Nice to meet you.
So much.
See you.
Very
Thank
nice
you.
to meet you.
See you
Thank
soon.
you for your
Bye-bye.
time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I think it's an amazing question because I mean, I think I'm just thinking how my experience at NYID would be during the pandemic, because to be surrounded by such a global cohort, but like doing it online is another experience. And the sense of culture shock, I think, going back to the arts and the beautiful answers that were provided to the last question, art can be a you know, it's a tool to heal, and it's a tool as well to understand someone else. So one way, for example, that I managed kind of getting around the whole Emirati culture, or UAE, what the UAE is, and how the history of the country and the cultures and the traditions, and how, you know, I got close to a lot of like locals was through my work in the arts. So I think talking to artists, you know, I mean, I started this publication, like you could do, for example, like interviews with different artists. Artists are always willing to talk about their projects. They love to share what they're doing. And that could be an amazing way for you to understand not only the project and the art, but also like why the artist is doing what they're doing. Like there's a reason, usually there's a reason tied to the culture, the history of the place, their feelings about different issues in society. And so through that, I'm sure you can find common ground and you can learn a lot. So talking to artists, I think not only visiting art shows, but like talking to artists through, it can be interviews, it can be just like going to these kinds of discussions and having the sense of connecting with an artist, can be like it can be online, it can be first the online. Now there's a lot of like just a DM away, where you just DM people and you kind of connect that way, and then you have more of like an in-person meeting. I think that helps. Culture shocks in terms of, I'm just thinking how I can answer that question. On other terms, it's more of, especially in the UAE, I think it's almost like a shame to not learn about this amazing country in the 4 years that you're there. So it's great to not only like meet your fellow classmates and have this international experience, but also connect with Abu Dhabi as a city, the UAE, and I think the arts is a great way to do that. So yeah, hope that answers.
Yeah, thanks, Ms. Sofiani. It's a very beautiful answer. And sadly, we're going to the end of our panel discussion today. It was a very, very insightful discussion. And I believe all of our audience have some takeaways from our panel and are very inspired by your amazing experiences. And thank you so much again, Ms. Song Ting and Ms. Sofiani. So our next session will be an exciting interview with Ms. Yiwei on the outlook for NFT and digital content industry. So stay tuned. It will be happening just in 5 minutes, and it will be a very exciting discussion again. And thanks again for Ms. Sofiani and Ms. Song Ting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mia.